I guess you could start.
You guess.
You guess?
Sure.
It's like, I sort of want to hear what you have to say. But
I don't
maybe
really
not.
want to do this
Something
today.
better might come on in the next 30 seconds.
Are we doing one of these?
Is this a podcast? What is this?
Welcome to the 17th segment, an official podcast of Good Morning BT.
Can we just talk about that? Hi, everybody. Welcome to episode 11 of the 17th segment. Can we just talk about that moment from today's show?
Hang on tight and enjoy the ride and enjoy the rest of your day.
Was today's date October 20th? The 20th?
Yes,
it's the
you
20th.
did get that one correct.
I got it right
That's
today.
the first podcast that you've actually gotten the date correct on the first try.
Got the date right. If you didn't hear today's show, we had a contest today. We were giving away tickets to the Hornets, the opening night for the Hornets, our Charlotte Hornets game, which is in a newly renovated Spectrum Center. And what's their tagline? They've got a space and a taste for everyone.
Yes.
A space and a taste for everyone.
That's what
said.
Yes.
The new Spectrum Center is. So we have these contests that we do when we give away tickets, because we are not going to be like, we're going to give it away to caller number 10. We want to do like a whole thing with it. We want to do a contest that's fun for everybody, for all of our listeners.
It was right there for them, and they could have done Taste the Value.
Taste the value. Well, today, Dave was one of our winners. And so he's going to the game on Wednesday at the new Spectrum Center. So after he won, I said, hey, Dave, call us back and tell us what you eat. And Bo and Jim were both like, what?
Like for meals of food?
Like they thought I was just randomly telling this man to call me and tell me like his food diary of
How do you sustain day to day?
What do you eat? But I meant like the new food at the Spectrum Center. He had just won tickets. I wanted to know if he tried any of the new food.
Because we had moved on. Like it's like I said on the air today, it's short attention span theater.
We said it 10 minutes ago.
That guy was 10 miles down the road by the time you said that.
And you know what? I don't think Dave ever responded, did he? Dave was just like, bye.
Dave's still holding.
Dave's still wondering how to get the tickets.
I was supposed to get his information to send him tickets, wasn't I? Whoops.
So that was I had one of those days today during the show where after segments, I was just like, guys, I'm so sorry that came out of my mouth like that. At one point, too, I had another one of those moments like I had back at the Speedway, the day that I was trying to think of like the whole ball of wax. And what I said was a whole bucket of crabs. And I don't know where that came from. I had another one today where I said, that's just going to stick to you like cheese.
But see, this is where you want to be, Beth. You think about all the places that you've been and the Speedway example. When you said that, some places you've been along the way, they would have said, you are so, what are you doing here? I tried to make the NASCAR driver say it, and we did.
He did.
And then Marcus Smith, the owner of the whole freaking Speedway, said it.
Okay, so here's the challenge.
But can I get right? Like you're in the right place?
Yes.
Fist bump?
100% in the right place. So here's the challenge for today. For anyone who watches this podcast when it's released, I want you to send me a text on the text line 704-570-1110 or call us during the show sometime this week and use "it's going to stick to you like cheese" somehow in
like
a
the
sentence
secret word
or a phrase. Yes, it's like Pee-wee's Playhouse. It's
Every
like the
time.
secret phrase. Just somebody...
So
somebody use it.
Now we're going to get, this is what happens, because the last time we did this, I think I said, hey, tell us whatever time you're watching the podcast or listening, drop on the text line and tell us when. And then like for the next 2 weeks, like randomly during TJ's show or Vince or whatever, watching the 17th segment.
So that would be even funnier is during somebody else's show, a text comes through where you're using a sentence where you say it's going to stick to you like cheese.
This is like 2 weeks ago on the air, I told that story about... I had a friend at summer camp who used to love to toss a sentence in between out of nowhere that meant nothing related to it. And he'd go, the funny thing is, I don't even like salad. And everybody like, wait, what? So that's what this needs to be like now, like in context, out of context really, but in random spots, whether it's the text line or you know what, maybe take it a step further, take your smartphone and actually video the conversation of you and your friends talking, and Beth can say, that'll stick to you like cheese.
It's going to stick to you like cheese. I just want that phrase to become part of at least Charlotte's lexicon, at least Charlotte. Just because these are just random things that come out and I don't know where it's as if my brain malfunctions briefly and words that don't belong together.
It's a glitch.
Yes, it's like a glitch in the matrix. Words that don't belong together come out in a sentence.
We thought it would be fun today to go down the road of, and we had people sort of suggest this along the way in one form or another.
Ask about it, yeah.
All-time favorite interviews, or and that can mean somebody famous or it can mean somebody memorable. But we go down this road of the worst interviews, the best interviews. I think when somebody asks me that question, there are several that pop into my head that are kind of the obvious ones. But one thing that tells me that we've built the kind of show that I set out to build with you is that, yes, they're famous people, but they're also memorable people and people that sort of became things that you go back to because of the weird, zany world that we've sort of built each day in the morning.
Yeah. So when you are thinking about this question, because we have been asked on our text line from listeners, like, okay, you guys talk to so many different people. Who are some of your favorites? Were you thinking about it in terms of just the show you and I have done together, or were you thinking about it in terms of an entire career?
Entire career.
Okay, because that's where my brain went to, is just the course of people who are memorable and who have been fun or interesting or awful and memorable.
So is there one that you immediately go to without thinking?
Yes. So I have two that I immediately go to without thinking. One of my favorite interviews of all time was when I was working at Fox doing the morning show Fox News Rising, and I interviewed Terry Bradshaw via satellite. And he used to do on his sports show, like I don't know. I can't. This is 2006 probably that I did this interview, like the top 10 with TB or something. And so when I had him on, and he was doing, when you get satellite interviews like that, they're doing a promotional tour for a book or something. And I think he had a book coming out or a movie or something. And so I did the talk about that. And then I decided, since his was like the top 10 with TB or whatever it was called, I decided to do the top 10 with BT with him. And I just he had to answer fire questions, and I asked him stupid questions like keg stand or, and he was dying laughing.
He played along.
He played along beautifully. And we laughed and had so much fun together doing that interview that by the end of it, after we had cut, he said at the end of it, he's like, that's like the best interview I've ever had. And I was like, I wish I could hop through the camera and
see, that's the thing though, but you took a risk. That's the risk that you take, because I'm going to tell you what most likely happened right there. In fact, I think it was 10 yards with TB is what it was called. And so I did 10 yards with BT. But did you tell him ahead of time that he was going to do? Okay.
No, I had no prep time before the interview. He got on the satellite. We had a satellite window that was like 10 minutes long. And the interview went for 10 minutes because we did that whole thing.
So this is what happens. This is a little behind the scenes for people who don't work in the world we work in. Happens in radio, happens in TV. And it almost happened to us last week. I missed the window last week, but I'll just give you a little behind the scenes. So we're affiliated with Fox News Radio. We're also, we've been affiliated with ABC over the years. When I first started working here, we were affiliated with CBS and even way, way back NBC. So we've kind of run the gamut. But the point is when you have a connection with networks, a lot of times they'll get access to big names and they'll say, hey, if you're interested in talking to Terry Bradshaw, we have a window and these times on what day, and then the various TV stations will book those windows. So if you're Terry Bradshaw, it's kind of like what we call the car wash. Like you basically have a 2-hour period where you have a book to promote or a TV show to promote, whatever, and you're going to be booked by the network on 10 stations over 2 hours.
Well, and I've been on the other end of that. When I was doing Right This Minute, which was a syndicated show, whenever would do...
Where's my humble brag?
No, whenever...
I feel helpless here.
Whenever we would do the new season of the show, they would send me into a studio to do the car wash. Yeah. So I would do hits with stations all over the country, and you can't see the other anchors, but you just have an earpiece in and you hear them. And most of the questions, because the PR people will send out a list of questions, and most of the anchors will ask those questions. They'll ask those 4 or 5 questions, and that's it. So you end up doing the same version of the interview over and over and over again. And you try, Like you feel like you're being redundant or boring, but you have to remember that those people in that market haven't seen this interview yet. And now that, thinking back about some of the satellite interviews that I've done, I'm glad that I did what I did with Terry Bradshaw, because I would have loved it if somebody had done that with me.
Yeah,
I would have loved it.
And some people, quite frankly, aren't good enough to be that unpredictable.
Oh,
or they don't want to
play
be.
ball.
Like Terry Bradshaw's been working for Fox since 1993, and then he worked for CBS 20 years before that. Then, of course, he was a player. So Terry Bradshaw's been around the block when it comes to entertainment.
And he played ball like a champ. It was so much fun.
But that's the risk that you took, is that you didn't get to talk to him ahead of time. So you said, okay, I'm going to mix it up. And either he's going to be right in the mood to play ball. And I've been in part of interviews, you probably have too, where the person wasn't.
The way they don't play ball.
I'll tell you about that one in a few minutes. But you took a risk, and he was game for it, because either he was so bored with what other people have been asking him, or you might have gotten him out of the gate. And you also run that risk sometimes of. So last Thursday we got a note that Brett Baer.
Sorry, we never got to who it was.
No, but it fits right in line with what we're talking about. We got a note, I did, that Brett Baer, Fox, does special report. He's their main anchor. That he has a new book out, and they said, hey, if you're interested in talking to Brett Baer, go online to our Fox affiliate place and reserve your spot.
Right.
Well, I didn't have a password. I hadn't set anything up, so there's this whole rigmarole that I had to go through. By the time I set all that up, they were all gone.
They had all been
but it was
booked.
like 10-minute segments, and so Brett Baer would sit down last Thursday and go through 20 stations. Now, on number 19 of that 20, he's probably so sick of answering the same questions. And I don't know where we would have fallen in that mix, but we always try to, anytime you're in a position like that, to, be the exception to the rule. But you have to, it doesn't work if the person on the other end is not willing to play ball.
And you have to be brave enough as the host to go there, and if you get shot down, be okay with getting shot down. That's the thing. We did the same. This is my, I said there were two that I would say are my favorites. The other one, we did the same thing. One of my favorite interviews was Mike Pence, Vice President Mike Pence. This was after he was vice president, but we had a conversation with him about his book and the fact that he was going to be speaking, I think, at Wingate University. I think there was something that was going along with it. But then we went into, and he didn't know we were going to do this. We went into his kind of history as a radio host, and Bo had some of the production from his old radio show in Indiana.
He had these cheesy jingles that he played.
And Bo played them, and then I asked him the question that was on my brain, about the fly that landed on his head during the debates that became this kind of. It became an SNL skit. I mean, it became a national conversation. And his answer was hilarious. And we got this whole side of Mike Pence that I don't think the majority of people have seen, because as vice president, he was so buttoned up. And as a governor, he was so buttoned up. But we kind of knew that he had that gear because he had been a radio host. So we knew he had the ability to probably ad-lib. And so we took a risk, and we had a lot of fun with him. And he played with us. And he was a delight, like an absolute delight. And I'm not talking about whether, how you feel about him politically. It was about his personality, his willingness to be open, his willingness to be self-deprecating. I mean, all of it. He was really interesting. And so for that, those are the two that really stick out in my brain. And over the course of a TV career, I mean, I've gotten to interview, Tim Robbins and Cindy Crawford and Brooke Shields and Adam West and, random people over the course of time. And I remember those interviews, but like Terry Bradshaw and Mike Pence stuck out as, wow, they just really wanted to have an interesting conversation, a fun conversation.
Bo, if you want to send me the humble brag sounder, I'll be happy to splice it in there anytime.
Come on.
Not only do I know about being in the car wash, I've been the reason for the car wash.
And do you know what? The day that I was in the car wash, there was like a monsoon storm. This was in Arizona, and it was pouring down rain, and my hair was like growing exponentially because it was so humid. And I don't know if it was just getting more and more humid in the room. So by the end of the satellite tour, I looked like I had just worked out. Like I was sweaty and my hair was all big. I looked like Rosanna Dana from SNL.
No, of course you've been the reason for the car wash. You're a big deal.
Hush. That's not how I meant it. I meant it as that you get the same questions over and over and over again. I was trying to tell
Hang
the
on.
story.
Can
I
talk?
have many leather-bound books.
Yes, and I have my own embosser, and I read the dictionary cover to cover.
My house smells like rich mahogany.
Not any of. I do have a dictionary.
She'll stick to you like cheese.
I will. This segment is going to stick to all of y'all like cheese.
It is. It is. Now, I've interviewed. So one of the interviews was, okay, one was with you. When we're talking about interviews, these aren't like my favorite or my least favorite. They're ones where you had
Wait,
somebody
when you
who
were
had
interviewing me?
No. You were with me with one of them.
Oh, I thought you were going to tell me that
No.
Rio was one of your favorite interviews.
No, I interviewed you one time, but you forgot.
I remember being interviewed by you.
No, so I remember one interview, if we're talking about interviews where you had to have somebody play along and they did or they did not. So one interview where he played along for a while and then he abruptly decided he was done. And you know what I'm about to talk about. We interviewed Bill Maher one day.
Oh.
And Bill Maher,
He just hung up on us.
yeah, so it was a great interview for the first 10 minutes.
No, we didn't get full 10 minutes. It was a great interview for like 4.
It's a great interview we talked to him for more than 4.
No, it was so short, Bo.
No,
it was
not
so
that short though.
Okay.
All right, so
And
I'm going to go back on my arc because I got it. But at any rate, it wasn't tremendously long.
When he wasn't rude by
But we
any
came out
stretch
of the
the
gate
imagination.
and we were kind of doing what we do, which is our thing. And we were talking to him, and then right in the middle, because we were doing the thing where I try every once in a while when you're interviewing somebody like that, you telegraph it a little bit because you say, "Hey, we so much appreciate your time. A couple more questions or one more question, just so they know you're about to wind this ship down and land the plane." And I think I said something to that effect.
Yeah.
And we asked him the last question, and he said, "You know what?
I gotta go.
I gotta go.
I have another interview."
Click. And we didn't even get a chance to say, "Hey, can we get what?" Bye.
And I was so excited about doing that interview with him. I was so excited about it. And I think when he hung up, we had just started doing the show together. And I think it was one of my first big radio interviews. I think my face turned red and I got really sad. Like my face turned red and I felt kind of dejected and slightly heartbroken. And at first it felt personal, but then I thought, like, he doesn't know me. Like, it's not personal against me. He just legitimately had to go because he was probably in a car wash and had to do another round of interviews and was just like, I got to get out of here.
Well, and we liked the interview enough that we
still
salvaged
played it.
it and we played it. We
Yeah.
basically said it's right in line with what we do. Hey, here's what happened. He bailed on us, but we did have I thought a substantive conversation leading up to that.
Yeah.
Now, the other one that I think about was on this show, but it was before you got here. You've heard it before because I've played it. But it's one of those situations where you have a split second where you have to decide, okay, am I going to lean into this or am I going to lean out of this? And so we used to have a pretty close relationship with a guy in town who unfortunately passed away a few years ago, but he was a great guy.
Mike Hall, you thinking about Mike Hall?
Who ran the Comedy Zone.
I was just thinking about him the other day. I missed that guy. He was so lovely, and he was just great at bringing guests around.
Well, he loved coming by here, and he loved, one of the reasons why this is a great place for him to come is because you come in this building and, you walk 30 feet and you pass 3 radio stations and a TV station. It's a great place to take anybody that you have in town that you want to sort of, again, back to that car wash deal. If you want to be in on as many platforms and hit as many different audiences as you can, we're a great place to come. So he knew that. But the thing I always appreciated about him was he would always text me with people that he knew would just sort of be in our lane, but not the other ones. Like I remember he brought John Lovitz in here one time.
Well, one time when I was just filling in for you, whenever Pat McCrory decided to run for Senate and you would bring me in every now and again, he brought Frank Caliendo in.
Yes.
And I texted you in the middle of that segment because I was listening and I was like, how am I not there on this day with you?
Well,
I love Frank Caliendo.
So Caliendo used to come in, but the memorable one wasn't even like, he didn't tell me that this guy was coming. We had Mick Mixon on the morning after the NFL draft. It was Zoki and me, and we had Mixon on the phone, and Mixon was breaking down. Gosh, I'm trying to remember who it was. But anyway, that's not the really important part of this. So we're talking, and just past the window walks Bob Saget, from Full House, from America's Funniest Home Videos.
From How I Met Your Mother.
And Zoki and I both went, whoa, man, that was Bob Saget. And I turned to our producer, who was not with us at the time. I said, Charles, go see if you can get him. Bob Saget, are you kidding me? I'd love to talk to him. And he ran down the hall, and with him is Bob Saget. So Bob comes in and he sits down, and we're like, wow. I said, and I started to say, we're going to talk to Mick Mixon, but we're going to postpone. And then I went, you know what?
Let's just do it.
We're doing this with Mick Mixon. And we put Mick on with Bob Saget. He sat down, didn't miss a beat, and neither did Mick. Mick jumped right into it and knew that I think that Bob Saget went to Maryland and they were talking about whatever draft, Maryland draft pick history. And Mick and Bob and Jim and me just kind of rattled off. And it was one of those things where I was like, I couldn't have written this. I couldn't have planned this. I'm glad that on a whim, I thought, you know what? And it kind of speaks to
just go with it.
The trust that you have with people in the room, because I know Mick Mixon fairly well, not like Jim, but I mean, I
feel
knew
like
him.
That's a humble brag, right? Do we use the sounder there?
What, did I know Mick?
know Mick really well.
No, I meant that I knew him well enough. I knew him well enough because he'd been on the show so many times.
I'm kidding.
Well, I mean, it's not like saying you know Beth Troutman. But anyway, we had Mick and we had Bob Saget on, and it's still to this day one of my favorite segments ever because I knew what went into it. And it was just, you go with it. You don't always have to have everything perfectly planned. Sometimes that's good, but sometimes it's like, as we say, lean into it. And so Bob Saget, good, and Bill Maher, not so good.
I'm trying to think of one that for me that just felt not so good. When we talked to Adam West, he was lovely. He wasn't rude or anything by any stretch of the imagination, but it was one of those booked interviews and it was about prostate health. So it's like the most boring topic ever. And
20 questions.
I think by the end of it, he had I probably was the last interview of the day or something. And he had probably gone through people's talking points and was just anticipating the next call. And so I'm doing this interview and he asked me if I had checked my prostate. And I was like, no. And I had a co-host, like a weather guy. So I think I just he wasn't sitting on the set with me at the time, I don't think. And I think I turned to him like over in the weather center and I was like, you want me to check yours?
It worked.
Like, what do you do? Like, what do you say to try to get out of that? But that was again, I think I might've been at Fox News Rising for that. But another one that ended up really good was Evander Holyfield. I interviewed him on, and Blair Underwood. Oh my gosh. So first, Evander Holyfield, I don't even remember why he was on the show. This was when I was doing a morning show for the Lifetime Network. I don't remember why he was on the show, what he was promoting, but I do know that he had just finished doing Dancing with the Stars. And so we got up and we moved the chairs off the set and we danced. We did the waltz together and he was as light on his feet as anything. I loved him. He was so funny. And then Blair Underwood was on promoting some kind of, it might have been sugar or something, some kind of food, because we were in the kitchen, on the kitchen set together, and he fed me a brownie. He fed it to me.
Blair Underwood.
Blair Underwood. I mean, if y'all don't know who that is.
Humble brags
do y'all know who
Blair?
Do you know who Blair Underwood is? He's so beautiful.
I don't have the sounder, Bo. I can't.
The beautiful man.
And he fed
Blair
me a
Underwood
brownie. And
fed me a brownie.
He fed it to me. I don't know why. I didn't ask him to. He just fed me the brownie. And my knees got all like, what? I don't know what to do. But I ate the brownie. And then I was all worried because, brownies are sticky. And so then I'm having to host the rest of the, and I feel like I had brownie all stuck to my teeth.
Blair Underwood.
Blair Underwood. He fed me a brownie.
That's all you need to know.
You've had me a brownie. I think I need to go find some of these videos because those were fun memories.
Let's see here.
More good than bad. Isn't that great?
No.
We've had more good than bad.
I mean, I remember, okay, so let's go in this direction.
Oh, no.
No, just when somebody says your best interview you've ever had.
Best,
favorite and best. I mean, I guess they can be different, but I mean, mine, when I think of favorite, it's because I thought I did the best job, I think.
Oh, because you thought you did the best.
It's a combination. No, hang on. It's a combination. It's the best interview. If somebody says you've been in radio or broadcasting all these years, what's the interview that you hang your hat on and say is the best one? It's probably, I'm guessing, because you thought you did well and the person who you were talking to play ball, right?
I don't even know how to answer that I would want to hang my hat on. I think I've always thought about him just in terms of how fun or interesting I thought the conversation was. And I'm trying to...
Well,
I probably Terry Bradshaw.
I get where Bo's coming from with the hang your hat on. Like, is that your best interview and the most fun?
Yeah.
Being a little bit different because while I'm a producer here and have been a producer, I did host a morning show way back yonder, and I have that answer is different. So
What's
like
yours?
I think for me personally, my best one was when we had Alton Brown in studio with us when I was doing
love him so much.
He was a
Country
blast.
singer.
No, he's
No.
a chef.
Yeah, the celebrity.
Well,
Well,
who's the country singer?
Oh, you're
Isn't
thinking
Alton's. What do you Alton?
you're thinking Alton.
So at least it was an Alton.
It was.
yes.
Okay.
Yes.
I don't feel so badly.
No,
then.
because we had him in on Good Morning BT.
Yeah.
However, what
was the
3
country singer's
months ago,
name?
4 months
Ansel.
ago? Ansel Brown.
It
Like I
was
said.
Alton. It was Brown.
Close.
Like I
Ansel
said,
Brown.
Alton.
Super close.
I-
Couple of
Ansel
letters.
Brown.
But yeah, Alton Brown was a ton of fun. Similar to what you guys were saying is we played it as we don't want to ask him the standard normal questions because this is when he was
Right.
doing his
Wait,
tour.
we haven't had Alton Brown on, right?
No, oh my
Okay.
gosh, I would flip. I would flip out if we had Alton Brown.
So he was doing the.
I'd be so excited.
Oh, I
podcast
can't
is
remember
this?
the name of it.
17th segment. Yes. Sorry.
Do I need to reduce my screen and go away? No. I was just trying to share my own.
You know, I said
little
I have a
insight.
short attention span. It just
He doesn't know where he is.
Anyway, Alton Brown was the hang your hat on, had a lot of fun. On air, it was great. Off air, we got along really well. We had a ton of fun. But my favorite would have been I interviewed a sci-fi author, John Scalzi, who I've read like almost all of his books. He and I sat in one of our production rooms for almost 2 hours and recorded an interview, none of which was really usable on air because we just geeked out over sci-fi and TV shows and movies. And it was like, well, this really doesn't appeal to women 25 to 35, which was our core audience for the station that I was on. But he was in town doing a book tour. If he had just released a new book, he was going to be at one of the local, stores. And I was like, oh yeah, of course I want to talk to John Scalzi. Bring him in. And we sat in a room for like 2 hours and just riffed on sci-fi stuff. And that was my favorite in that I just got to sit and basically hang out and chill with somebody for 2 hours.
Okay.
But Alton Brown
Do you still have it?
Yeah, no, I'm sure I do. Yeah.
Okay, so now I see what you're doing. So okay. Now I get.
Maybe
now
that's just how I kind of heard the topic, but that's just
Now
me.
I get the
see what
game.
he's doing?
No, I get the game. I get the question.
I
that you
don't. I don't know where I am.
asked. You asked the question like what interview would you hang your hat on or like
Yeah.
what was. I had when I was at WC
Which
and
17 interviews would you hang your hats on?
there are so many that I don't know that I would hang my hat on.
I have a closet full of hats, Bo. Which one do you want where?
Know that I would hang my hat on this one, but you know that I geek out about Arthur C. Brooks.
Mm-hmm.
He did like a happiness project for the Atlantic. He wrote a book called The Conservative Heart. He used to be the president of a conservative think tank in Washington, D.C., and he came through Charlotte to promote his book, The Conservative Heart, and I basically used him as my guest for the full half hour of the political show Flashpoint.
Mm-hmm.
I loved him. He was so smart, so incredibly articulate, so interesting, and it is not one bit surprising to me that he ended up doing this happiness project for the Atlantic. He's been on like CBS mornings talking about the research and the work that he's done on happiness. He's so insightful, but he's so vulnerable and so open. And I have followed his career because I enjoyed interviewing him that much. And I think that's probably the biggest impression somebody had on me, that I've continued following their career because he was someone that I didn't know a lot about, but I had prepped for the interview and I read his book before the interview. And we were talking in the green room before we went in to record, and I had his book there with like 47 Post-it notes, as you can imagine, as I probably would, because I read the whole book. And when I sat down and he saw all the Post-it notes, he said, you know what? I think you might be the first person to ever interview me who has actually read the book, who actually read the book that I'm here to promote. And I thought that was interesting, and it kind of made me sad for the state of people who are interviewing. But I mean, I get it. Like, you get a lot of books and you have a lot of interviews, but
I get that too when I interview authors.
But I read the book because I wanted to be able to have and so the show was only a half an hour with commercial breaks. And I could have talked to him for 9 years, not just about the book, but just about, every question that he answered sparked something else I wanted to talk about in my mind. And it was just one of those things, like if I had to create a dinner party with some of my favorite people, if I could pick anybody I'd pick him.
It's like Steve
for my
saying,
dinner party.
Steve was saying that he did an interview that was so interesting to him, the
yes.
subject matter, that you sort of get lost in the fact that you're doing this for other people.
Yeah, you're doing it for a TV show, right?
And how great a situation is that if you can get somebody who's engaging you.
Yes, and who's that
on that
smart
level.
and that good. So Arthur C. Brooks, I mean, just man, and Chris Wallace, another one that I enjoyed. We would talk with him every Friday on Fox because he had Fox News Sunday, and so I got to talk politics with him every Friday.
Insert sounder here.
No. You don't know where I'm going with this one, and I don't know if Beth does either. But so Beth and I we were like ships. We weren't even ships in the night. We missed each other working at the same Fox affiliate. You left, and then I came.
Right.
But you set the table for an interview on the show in the morning. They did because they're not a Fox affiliate over at the WCCB anymore, but they were at the time. And so I'm assuming that you set the framework of this that lasted for a few years after you left, of interviewing Christopher Wallace.
On Friday. Chris Wallace on Fridays. Yeah. I did. Thank you. That lasted long past me.
So they had an anchor who came after you. She was a couple anchors past you. I know this because I went over there and worked there for a little while, and they trained me on the morning show. And during one of my training sessions, I was downstairs in the control room listening to one of these weekly interviews with Chris Wallace, who at the time was the host of Fox News Sunday each week. I mean, he was the senior reporter or senior commentator at Fox News at the time. A big deal, on the level of the Meet the Presses and the ABC's This Week, all the people that do those. So anyway, there was an anchor there who proceeded to interview Chris Wallace, and I don't know what the story of the week was overseas, or there was an obligatory thing that everybody was talking about. And then she proceeded, straight-faced, expecting a thought-out answer. What did you think of the results of American Idol last night? Because in her eyes, he's working for the big Fox umbrella.
Fox.
And, we can both tell you about what it's like to work for a Fox network affiliate in the age of Fox News, because they think you all work in the same room. But anyway,
you don't.
Hearing Chris Wallace trying to eloquently get out of answering, well, I don't really watch that program. But I'll never forget that. And that probably happened because you planted the seeds for Chris Wallace to do local hits with the Charlotte station.
Oh, that's so funny. My final day at WCCB was a Friday, and so I interviewed him on my final day, and he did this beautiful, like they told him, I guess before the interview started, he did this lovely goodbye to me on the air, which was so sweet, and it made me cry. Actually, I cried on the air. Shocking, I know. And he invited me. He was like, "If you're ever in Washington, come by the studio to see me." And I was actually going to be in Washington like 2 weeks from that day for a baby shower. And so I went by and saw him. I went into the studio and I went and sat down and talked to him. And I got there like all windblown. I was completely lost. It was in the days before like I had a GPS on my phone or anything like that. I just had a little flip phone. So I got completely lost and I thought I was going to be late. And I got in there like all windblown and my hair like stuck to my lip gloss and sat down in the seat all stressed out before I got to sit down and talk with him. And we had a good like hour-long conversation maybe in his office and chatted about the world and politics and Benazir Bhutto.
So I'll tell you, this is probably my favorite. Do what?
I was trying to think. It's the former president of Pakistan, Benazir Bhutto. Go ahead.
Ask Jeeves.
Keep talking while I make sure I'm getting that right.
Well, it's somewhat of in some ways it's a similar story, but PGA Championship came here in 2017. So it's been here twice now, but in 2017.
Benazir. There's a Z. Benazir Buddha. Thank you.
Benazir
Go ahead.
Buddha.
Benazir.
2017, the PGA Championship came, and I reached out to CBS hoping that we could get Jim Nantz on the show.
That
And-
appeared in the film, the famous film
That's right.
with Jim Zoki.
With Jim Zoki. This was, I want to say this was before that, or maybe, I don't know. At any rate, Jim Nantz is, the lead sports guy for CBS, and one of the, I mean, he's on the Mount Rushmore. I mean, he's Jim Nantz. So we reached out to CBS. I reached out to CBS to see if we could get Jim to come on, and Jim agreed to come on. Now, Jim Nantz is in the category, I would put Dale Murphy in this category for me too, because you talk about people that you grow up watching and you really revere, and you're thinking, okay, what's it going to be like to talk to this guy when you finally get him? Is he going to be the way he comes across on TV? Is it going to be the way that you would hope that he would be?
Like, he set the bar so high.
Right. And you know very well that sometimes there's a facade that gets created, and when you meet these people behind the scenes, they're not at all like they were, or how they portray themselves on TV. One of the reasons Jim Nantz is so successful is because he appears like your buddy next door. Like he appears like he'd go have lunch with you right now, and he's speaking to you through that screen.
Very guy next door.
Yeah, very neighborly, right? That's why he
Neighborly.
says, "Hello, friends," right? I had him on the show, and we actually taped it. And Jim said he has this window on whatever day, and so I went in the studio, and I had, like you did, I got like 20 questions, and I'm thinking I'll get to like 3.
Right.
I had 20 questions. I probably got to 18 of them.
He gave you that much time? It
And
was by phone, or he was in
It was by
person?
phone, but so we're talking, and we asked every question. I ended up telling him that my dad, he's from Mount Holly, and my dad grew up in Mount Holly. So at the end, I told him, I said, my dad grew up in Mount Holly, and he starts talking about going on and on about that. Basically, I'm sitting here going, I know you got to go. And he's like, well, one more thing. And so at the end of it,
awesome.
at the end of it, he says, are you coming to the tournament? And I said, I should be, but I did not apply for the press credentials in time. We're covering it. We did not take the show there that year because the PGA Championship is a different management group than the Wells Fargo Championship, or now the Truist Championship. So I didn't get my ducks in a row. I could have gone, but I didn't. And I said, no, I'm not going to be out there. But I said, I'll be watching on TV. And he says, well, why don't you come? I said, because I don't have a pen. And he says, I've got a couple of extra CBS ones.
What? He invited you?
He left me his 2 extra passes at the desk of the hotel where he was staying in town, and my daughter and I went out to the tournament, and he invited us back to the CBS area. So I got this really cool picture of me and my daughter and Jim Nantz. And when we went out there to see him, this is the guy that flew in, and he's anchor of all the coverage, and he's got a million places to be. And he sat down behind, in the area behind the bleachers, and we just talked and took pictures. And he didn't have to do that.
No,
he
that's
absolutely
so
didn't have
awesome.
to do that. I mean, I don't know, you get to meet people that you really think highly of, and then you hope that they don't. That's not just a narrative that they try to carry. He was as gracious and as generous with his time, and you can tell when you're talking to somebody and they're not just going through the motions. And so there's an example of somebody that I was really thrilled to get on the show. It was a big get. The PGA Championship was in town, and then on top of that, he ends up being like the greatest guy. And so now when I watch him do anything, I'm just like, wow, he's
a good dude.
A good dude who doesn't have to be a good dude, but is. And so everybody who tells you that, those people aren't what they're cracked up to be, sometimes they are. And that's really cool when they are. And I know it makes somebody like me, who is nowhere near that echelon of stardom in broadcasting, for whatever place I am on the tiny rung of the ladder, it sort of makes me want to be that way to whatever extent I can be. And I feel like we are.
So that somebody has that same kind of experience.
I mean, I love what we do, and we're lucky to do it. And obviously, I'm very proud to have worked for this station all these years. But we've brought up examples of people who don't have, like I've said to people before, some people are talented enough or have a certain level of talent where they don't have to treat people the right way. Their talent is such that they can afford to be asses. and it doesn't matter because their talent will make people who work around them and that employ them
anyway.
put up with their BS because they're that good. And there are plenty of people like that. Unfortunately, in this business, there's probably more people at the big top of the list that are that way, unfortunately. But then there's some that aren't. And so I said to myself when that happened, I'm going to make sure I relay that story whenever I can, because you need to know who the good guys are and good gals are when they're out there.
Well, I love hearing that, because you say never, they say never meet your heroes.
Right. Well,
And
Dale
he
Murphy was the same thing. Like I told Zoki back in the day, this is like the second year I was on the air. I was a little afraid to have Dale Murphy in because I'm like, gosh, is he going to this was my guy, my idol sports idol as a kid. And he was everything in a million years you could have wanted. And that's not how life usually is. But again, a better way to say what I was trying to say is that's not how life is. But when you find out examples of people who are that way, I think it's up to us to
tell the
illuminate
story.
them,
Yeah, and make sure people know that they're really, really just good human beings, and remind people that there are good human beings out there, even the ones who are super successful and maybe get a bad rap because they are broadcasters or because they are Hollywood actors or sports figures, whatever.
Well, and I'll back you up on Jim Nantz, Bo, because when I used to work for the World Golf Hall of Fame, he emceed one of our, I'm sure he's done more than one, but one of the years in which I was there, the actual Hall of Fame induction ceremony, he emceed it. And I was one of the people who was the liaison with the Hall of Famers and the broadcasters and the people that were coming through. And he was a gem. I
love it.
I also said the same. I said something, kind of similar to Bo, as I was like, I'm actually also a broadcaster. I work for, a part-time for one of the radio stations here in Jacksonville, and we got onto the broadcasting thing, but I also work for the World Golf Hall of Fame. So he's one, and in a very similar vein, since we just happen to be talking golf and PGA, Phil Mickelson was another one. One of the nicest guys I could have imagined. He and his wife both. There were some golfers, I'll admit, who were not the nicest of people. But I had great experiences with Mickelson, with Ernie Els, with,
Beth would tell you Rory McIlroy is just salt of the earth.
And Rory and Beth we are super tight.
If you've ever seen the photo, he was 100 yards from me. We're that close.
That's the Beth's Song of the Day playlist on Spotify. You can go see that photo right now.
If you go to my Spotify playlist that Steve created, it's that picture of me pointing at Rory McIlroy.
Now, here's an interesting notion, and I'm curious as to whether both of you would feel this way about any interview that you've ever done. I would say Jim Nantz. Would I like to interview Jim Nantz again? Yes, but no.
Because you don't want to mess up that experience.
Yeah.
And I think he would be as gracious the second time around, and third and fourth and fifth, because the fact that you sort of reinforce it, Steve. Look, I talked to the guy for 30 minutes, and it was basically me telling him, okay, we got to go. That's how it was. And so you don't experience something that with somebody, that's genuine. You can't fake that. So I would expect probably anybody else, unless he just had a terrible day or something, probably got the same thing that I got. But it's because that's his character and his integrity. But there are a handful of interviews like Dale Murphy. I don't want it. They told me Dale Murphy was in town this most recent night season, and we were going to get him on the show, and something fell through. And I don't know if anybody could detect it at the time. Zoki probably would have noticed, but it fell through, and I really wasn't that upset about it. And somebody who doesn't know me very well would say, "Well, it's like his sports idol. He bet he was crushed by that." And I wasn't crushed because in 2014 we did it, and I'm thinking to myself, it can't be any better than that. I just want that one to live where it lives. And it's the same thing with Jim Nantz, and I could probably name other ones too, when you think about interviews that went well. And sometimes it's not necessarily just the person and their stature. Sometimes you get somebody on and you want to execute the interview well. You want it to go well. But there are a handful of those over the years where I don't want to do it again, because I feel like let's let the one you did live there.
It's not going to get any better.
If someone's going to go back and listen to my interview with Jim Nantz, I want it to be that one,
Well,
I get that.
And I think, can I ask also to both of you, there's also the aspect of the interview, because you're on mic or on camera, and those individuals know that they are on mic or on camera. And then also when you're not actually interviewing, when you're either pre-interview or post-interview, or you just happen to be let's say again, at an event with somebody. We talked about this on the air, for example, Bo, however many weeks or months ago it was, that I've had a couple of different experiences with Bill Murray. And all of my experiences with Bill Murray have been great. He's been super nice. He's remembered me, from one year to the next. When, again, this goes back to the World Golf Hall of Fame, and the Caddyshack restaurant is all right there in St. Augustine, that I would see him and his brothers. And, I'm in my polo shirt that has my name tag and my logo on it. So that I'm not just some random fan, but also you're not in front of a camera or on a microphone. Nobody's, tracking this. And I guess, yes, we do live in the world of social media where if I had a bad experience, I could tweet about him being a terrible person or whatever. But it's the way that you're treated just kind of behind the scenes. Like I said, even with like Phil Mickelson and his wife, they didn't know me from Adam. I mean, they were driven up to a hotel. I met them at their car and was like, hi, Mr. Mickelson, Mrs. Mickelson. And both of them immediately were like, no. You didn't know. What's your name? Oh, Steve. Yeah, I'm Phil. And this is it was not one of those, we're not those people. And it was behind the scenes. It wasn't performative. They were just genuinely being nice people. And I think Jim Nantz, for me anyway, was the same way. And I always feel like that's kind of the thing.
That's the defining characteristic.
Right. Yeah, it's great that when we're on mic or on camera that you're a nice person and you play and we have fun and, that interview went really well. But as soon as the cameras are off or as soon as the mics are off, that person changes. And I have encountered those celebrities as well. And you're like, wow, that's such a disappointment because here we were 30 seconds ago. We were having a good time.
You were lovely.
Turns out you are not a nice person. So I'm curious if you guys have also, not obviously we don't have to name names, but I am curious if you have also had those experiences because I've had a bunch of those over the years. Here's my humble brag moment of celebrities that I happen to have met, through somebody or because of something, or I'm, backstage at a show and there's somebody else. I had an experience with a couple of rappers years ago whose names I will not, when I was like, wow, this might have been one of the coolest nights of my life. And nobody will ever know it. No, we didn't take pictures. We didn't, record anything. But what a good time and how cool were those guys?
I think that
hanging out with rappers, any experience?
I was hanging out with a lot of rappers. I think my experience is probably different than a lot of even broadcasters because my career started behind the scenes in Hollywood. So I was working day in, day out with these really famous actors, and I was seeing them kind of in their natural habitat, off camera, eating at craft service and at parties and after parties and things like that, and just spending time with them. And I will 100% say, having worked at the West Wing for the years that I did, Martin Sheen, just a lovely, lovely man, extremely intense Catholic faith, just a lovely human being. Allison Janney is everything that you would hope she would be. Loved her. She's funny. She's smart. I mean, we would just go get drinks after the show sometimes because she lived near me.
Those two in particular, because so many people watched that show and they watched him as president and watched her.
As CJ Craig.
Were they their characters when they were with you? And I don't mean were they in character. What I mean is their normal demeanor. Like you would hope that President Bartlett, Martin Sheen, I'm hoping that if I sit down and have lunch with Martin Sheen, he's like President Bartlett.
Well, he is just as far as, President Bartlett was famous for his kind of integrity and for his he wanted the world to be better than it was. Martin Sheen definitely has that part of he's just in his soul. He's right. That. Allison Janney is just funny. She is funny and witty and kind and smart as a whip and playful. And I mean, she had the intelligence that her character, CJ Craig, had. I mean, she has that, but she's, the character that she is right now on The Diplomat, that seems that character seems so foreign to me because I do know her and she's just a really good lady. And Bradley Whitford, hilarious, loved to be a prankster on the set and was just fun and a good man. Dule Hill, who played the president's assistant and was later on Psyched. And he was in Bringin' Da Noise, Bringin' Da Funk on Broadway. He's a tap dancer, an amazing tap dancer. He's so talented and so funny and so fun. And Richard Schiff, oh my gosh, that played Toby, loved him. That cast of everybody, they were all exactly who you'd hope they would be. They were all good people, easy to work with, lovely, like just everything you would hope that those folks would be. Everybody was amazing. Glenn Close was on that show. She was lovely. She played a Supreme Court justice nominee for like 3 episodes. So I had these kind of experiences that weren't ever, I was never interviewing them. I was never somebody who was going to put them on the air. So I was just a lowly production assistant when I started, or an assistant to a director. So they could have easily treated me horribly. They could have been like, go get me coffee, go get my laundry done. Or they could have ordered me around in any way, shape, or form and didn't have to be lovely to me, and always were. They were always lovely and fun. So for that experience, I was really, really grateful. As far as interviews, I can't think of anybody that was ever different on the air with me than they were off the air.
I'm trying to think of anybody behind the scenes.
Because I hug people as soon as they come in. If they're in person, I hug them anyway. So I try to disarm people immediately.
I mean, I've told the story about Tom Wopat. That's on the regular show. Luke Duke came in, and this was a different station, but he just had an air about him that didn't want to be there. Was in town for a play, and yeah, of course we're going to talk about the play. But then when you get your obligatory Dukes of Hazzard question, act like you're sort of.
Was it Guys and Dolls?
It might have been. I mean,
I saw him in Guys and Dolls.
I mean, how many things has he been in Charlotte in? Not that many.
He was in Guys and Dolls on Broadway.
So that probably makes
Sky
sense.
Masterson.
So maybe again, and I don't remember. I could go back. I got the tape somewhere, but I'm sure I asked him about. Like, I'm not going to have you if you're in town to play for a play. I'm going to start with that.
Right.
But like, this is another thing about interviews that we do from time to time. There are those people that are in the category of a big enough name that you have them on, but they're there to hawk something. They're there to advertise something. You see this when you go to like the Super Bowl radio row all the time. Anytime you go somewhere where they're basically in a room so that you can cycle people through, but they're there to talk about a product.
Yeah.
Like former Carolina Panthers. Let's take Jake Delhomme for example. Jake Delhomme probably at some point in his career has gone to a Super Bowl, and he goes and talks to various radio stations, but he's there on behalf of, Barbasol. And he's there to talk about, and the interviewer knows that part of the deal is you got to talk about Barbasol for a few minutes, and then you talk about something else. There were a number of senators. Kay Hagan was always this way. When we had U.S. Senator Kay Hagan on the show, I knew that if Kay Hagan came on, Kay Hagan, as long as I asked Kay Hagan about her latest bill that she was working on, then Kay Hagan would be happy to answer whatever questions I would have about anything else. And it didn't matter what those were, but you sort of, there's a push and a pull here.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
So my point is that Tom Wopat, star of the Dukes of Hazzard, that 10 out of 10 people are going to think, okay, it's Luke Duke. Of course, I'm going to ask you about your play that you're in town to perform. I'll start with that, but I'm going to ask you a question about Boss Hogg somewhere or whatever. And when I did, it was just this air about like, you're really going to ask me about the Dukes of Hazzard? Maybe he was having a bad day. Maybe, I don't know. Maybe I would have him on tomorrow.
And you'd love him.
And I'd love him, but you know what? I won't, because of that experience. You don't forget stuff like that.
Yeah, it's like having Shatner on the show and not bringing up Captain Kirk at some point.
Right,
It doesn't have to. The whole thing doesn't have to be. But I mean, come on. At some point, we got to bring.
You're gonna think. Yeah. Well, maybe that would be one. You said you didn't ever want to have your baseball player guy back on.
But that's for a different reason.
But you don't want to have him back on because you don't want to ruin the experience. Right. So maybe Tom Wopat is one of those people you need to have back on because it might change your experience.
But it was such a vibe. Like you guys were talking about like vibes you get off the air.
Yeah.
Like it was the same the problem was it was like off the air, it was like, oh, I wonder how this is going to go. And then it went on the air and I'm like, oh, it hasn't changed. And so that's one of those ones where it's like, you kind of showed me who you were. So I would be very, very hesitant to go down that road again.
I think there are some politicians that it looks like I promise I'm not scratching my bahoonie. It's my thigh right here. Now I'm sitting. I'm scratching my leg. There are some politicians definitely that we've interviewed that they're the same off the air as they are on the air. and it's not great either place, you know. It's like, and for those people, I won't name names, but there are certainly some that we've interviewed that you can tell that they don't like you immediately whenever they meet you, or whenever I don't know.
I will name two politicians. They're both long. One of them's passed away, and one of them is out of politics. But I had interactions with them. This was 1999, and I was doing a Christmas show for this station. And I had the opportunity to interview in person both John Edwards and Jesse Helms. And look, we could do a whole podcast about Jesse Helms and John Edwards, and there's baggage with both men. We know that. And there are all kinds of stories. But John Edwards walked in the studio, and it was as if I was, like a smudge on the floor. I mean, it was like
that makes me sad.
He came through, and it was like, all right, what am I doing? Let me do it. Here we go. And then up and gone, and no pleasantries really, no anything, just kind of like on to the next thing. And I went to Wingate University because they have what they call the Jesse Helms Center. And so Helms was in town, and I had to go to him. And at this point in time, he was like on a scooter, and he didn't get around very well, not too far away from when he died. Because like I said, this was 99. So like, I think 5 or 6 years later, he passed away. Could not have been more gracious. Mm-hmm. And there are stories about Jesse Helms, whether you fall in line with him politically or not. There are legendary stories about his constituent service.
Oh, yeah.
And when you hear those stories and people say, well, one of the reasons why this guy kept getting elected, despite the fact that he was a lightning rod for controversy sometimes, was that he just was fanatical, no matter who you were, if you lived in his district.
Which was the whole state of North Carolina.
Yeah. And Jesse Helms goes back further in politics,
right.
But to your point, like once he got elected, if you are within his domain, he would fanatically attend to you or have his staff. And so when I sat down and asked him for the interview, he didn't have to give me the time of day. And he talked and talked and talked and wanted to know about me and blah, blah, blah. And what are you doing? Because he had a broadcasting background. He used to work at WRAL in Raleigh early in his career. And it's, again, these little snapshots in time. I've never had a chance to interview John Edwards again, but I don't anticipate it would have been much different. But who knows? I mean, if John wants to come on our show, and where are you now?
Hey, yeah, where are you now? We'll take you. We'll have you on. I told you about my experience with Jesse Helms when I was in third grade. I won an award, and I was in D.C. to accept the award as a third grader. And he invited me to the Capitol building and took me on a private tour. We went in the little cars, the little tram that goes underneath the Capitol that you guys didn't think was real. It's real.
No, I believe.
And we had lunch together, and he.
I believe in
I have
Beth
pictures
trauma.
with him on the Capitol steps, and he called me his granddaughter. He introduced me to people as his granddaughter, and I loved him. I mean, as a third grader, meeting a senator. I've always been a political nerd, so I thought that was the coolest thing in the entire world. And he was just as lovely as you could imagine on that day. And it's same with my mom. My mom was with me, and he was just lovely to both of us. So you know what? If John Edwards is out there, he could be one of those people that you give a second chance to. If Tom Wopat is out there,
prove us wrong, guys.
Yeah, if you want to come back in and do a big long conversation with us, we're here for it.
The American Dream, Dusty Rhodes. I'll never forget that interview. I'm just thinking of a few as we go out the door here. But I mean, again, he was a legendary wrestler. And, he has a family that still lives on in the wrestling world. But Dusty Rhodes came on with us. He didn't normally do interviews. I had a friend who was his driver because he was in town for one of those wrestling conventions. Mm-hmm. A lot of these come at like hotels for a weekend and sign autographs. And he was in town for one of those, and I had a friend who was his driver, so he got me kind of like a backdoor type interview where I didn't have to go through
a backdoor interview, you say? Wow, we just learned something new about Dusty Rhodes.
Let me tell you, that's a big backdoor. No.
And Bo Thompson, apparently.
What I'm getting at is that you have to go through.
What does that even mean?
You Seen how large the man was?
Yeah, I was going to say, in Beth language, this would be referring to his bahoonie.
Yes.
What?
I know where you were going, and I'm thinking this is a large man.
Okay.
No, wait a minute. Hang on. During the interview, I'm going to pull up a picture of him. I don't think
We can't hear you because you have your microphone up.
I don't think you realize how large. You don't even have headphones on. How did you know you can't hear me?
Because your microphone was in your lap.
Worry about yourself over there. Anyway, when the show's over, I want you to look up a picture. Look up a picture of the American Dream Dusty Rhodes.
Just watch the podcast. Once I edit it, I'm putting these photos up, like of everybody that we've spoken about so far.
Okay, good.
So, and I'll make sure it's the proper photo of Dusty for you, Bo.
I'll send you a picture of. I'm gonna say
Of who?
No, but I was gonna say Dusty Rhodes Backdoor. Like, what is that picture even gonna be? What is that picture even gonna be?
Okay, let me go back to where I started.
So what was this Backdoor interview
What's
about?
a different? What's a way I can say you didn't go through the proper protocols?
You didn't go through the channels. You didn't.
Yes.
You didn't have to.
A backdoor channel.
Back channel.
Back
Just
channel.
back channel. Leave the door part off. It's just a back channel.
Let's see. Then I was going to say rear channel.
What are you doing?
Doing what I do every day. I went through, as Steve would say, a back channel, so I didn't have to go through the normal.
Thank God you didn't have to go through the back door, Bo. That would have been an awful way to get an interview.
Can we just end this now? We're going so well.
I'm gonna end on Dusty Rhodes. He was great, though, right?
Dusty was great. One of my favorite interviews.
I bet it was your favorite.
We really are editing this part out. Anyway, Dusty Rhodes, look it up. It's a good interview. That's all I have to say.
Bye.
Later.
Listen to Good Morning BT with Bo Thompson and Beth Troutman live weekdays 6 to 10 on News Talk 1110 and 99.3 WBT. Plus worldwide on the WBT mobile app.